Player Will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. I just put out a poll last week to see what kind of content you might want to see me focus on more, and one of the recurring themes was more just general PvP replay-oriented stuff. I used to do a lot more in the way of like free match showcases, and I actually stopped doing that once they put in the Veritas medals there, if only because the quality of teams that we're now playing were slightly less than they used to be, so I didn't actually think it was all that meaningful anymore, but I do still want to think of creative ways to show some actual PvP, some theory crafting, some team building, a little bit of what I do when I make these teams. So I will try to still attempt to do this through an arena perspective. And this week I'm going to showcase Exdeath, but I'm also going to show off Lena, if at all possible too. But before we jump into that, there's something super critical I just want to talk about with Arena as to why I don't often consider the results really much of evidence of anything. It's certainly better than nothing. It's better than me just doing it in my head. But to make like definitive takeaways and statements, there's some flaws about Arena that I just want to reiterate to people, and going through these bullet points here. The first one is very obviously that the units, and more specifically the vision cards, are always skewed by what is the bonus that week, and teams are often fit to include them even when they're not best, and or the type of team that you would see in competitive guild war or class match when you aren't biased toward using some of those bonus things. And by that fact alone, you'll see some teams are outright missing here in Arena that you would see in guild war simply because they don't align with the bonus units. So the testing field of what you have against is often incomplete. The second thing is that the arena ladder is gamified so that the team you have out there isn't necessarily the best team possible, but just the team that you know that you can farm points off someone higher than you. So I might hit someone right now, and obviously I'm going to look specifically for teams that when I eyeball it, I think this is a good representation of the team. But for those of you that are testing an arena, may not always have the ability to analyze like that, just looking at the screenshot. And so yeah, quite often you might be hitting a team that realistically just isn't a good team. It's just a team someone used to farm points off someone higher as they were hunting for certain kinds of teams. The other thing is that some people genuinely don't care about the actual team performance of what they do. They just aim for a certain rank and they throw refreshes at it just to make sure they hit it. So if your goal is top 1000, you may not be tinkering 100% to make the best team possible. You're just making a team that's barely good enough, throwing it in there, skipping, repeating, just so you can maintain that rank. And so what you see in game, again, isn't a reflection of what the best optimized team might be. And finally, reincarnations do vary wildly, and you really have no insight as to what the enemy reincarnation levels are here, other than looking at what their HP level is in the match. And even then, you have to do some math to figure that out. So who you hit in Arena may not necessarily apply to what you might see in your Guild War ranking as well, where normally in Guild War, you might have some inclination about an enemy team's reincarnations based off the total attack or total magic stat. Or if you play super casual, you can assume that most other players aren't reincarnating, but if you're playing very competitive, you can assume that they likely are. And so that alone has some pretty drastic stat differences. And so even when you're fighting teams here, not having the visibility to it may not always align to the takeaway that you have in your own Guild War or class match ranking experience. Now, that preamble aside, I'm going to talk through the team that I want to showcase today. And I'm using a team that is obviously very Final Fantasy V oriented. I want to have a chance to show off Lena as well as Exdeath. And this is a mono staff black mage team. Now, one of the key things that I am going to attempt to still stress test it here is that I want to be able to take on some evade teams. I don't think I'm going to beat all of them, but I want to at least be relatively competitive. That being said, if I was really gunning for these evade teams, me personally, this is where Summer Resnick is just like objectively a better choice here than someone like Lena, but not everyone has Summer Resnick, so we're going to have some fun with this in lieu of that. Now, just in my overall setup, let's actually pause to just look at the map really briefly, because there's just one specific thing you should keep in mind here when it comes to your starting locations. And again, the numbers here indicate the height tiles of what you're seeing. If there's no number in a tile, that means it's blank and untraversable. And so what you're seeing here in slots 2 and 3 is the fact that they cannot directly move to each other. Slot 3 would theoretically have to walk forward one step first and then walk a couple to the left, which it shouldn't affect much in the way of your buff rotations, but it should be noted because technically they would be starting out one entire row further ahead than normal. And that's always important because when thinking about your team rotation, what kind of buffs you want to get off, you want to try to anticipate how many turns you'll get before the enemy is in range. So you always want to estimate exactly how long the map is, how fast your team is, and that is always the consideration that goes into like whether or not you can have a TMR toggle on or off. Because there are many units where 2 buffs are kind of mandatory to make them function optimally. Now, personally, I'm expecting to get off exactly 2 buffs here in this match. I do not expect more than that. The general idea is that, let's look at this slot 1 unit here. They're going to move to the teammate, that's buff number 1, and then they're going to walk forward 3 squares, that's buff number 2. And you can see where my cursor is right now. Where they're standing, the enemies by that point are very likely going to be within 5 squares or so of range. So I can pretty safely assume that I don't have any opportunity there for TMR to go off. So I'm actually turning off my TMRs here on this team. And right now, this is what we often refer to as like a stat stick when we look at these TMRs. I have chosen these TMRs for 2 things in particular. One is always agility tuning to make sure that they move in the order that I want, but also secondarily for some kind of stats that I might want for them. Now you might be scratching your head at the TMR that I have here on Shreka, and I literally have this here for both of those reasons. Number 1, for agility tuning, but secondarily because I want to emphasize a little bit of the accuracy for her. And so this TMR does skew a little bit higher, not a ton higher, but enough. And the thing that's very particular about this agility tuning is that this team is intended so that Shreka will move to Lena to buff, Exdeath is going to move toward Lena to buff, and I'll just show these agility values here. She's at 124. My Exdeath is at 120, so he's second fastest, and Lena's at 113, a bit slower. I am using agility trust stones on the right side for all 3 of these units, and for Shreka, I'm using the luck trust stone set on the left side. For Lena, I'm using the spirit set just for the extra healing. I don't anticipate her to live long or hit anything. I just want this for some of the extra healing power. I don't often do that for my supports, but Lena, this is the exception. And then for Exdeath, I am using the HP set because I'm not gearing him for accuracy at all. I am gearing him for his 100% hit, and then if he can't hit them, he's going to use his TP-oriented abilities. Here, I have D-Shell enabled on the Green Mage subjob, so he'll hopefully use that in some of these evade matchups. Now, a really special note as well, this is super common when it comes to using supports in this middle role where you have 2 people converge on that middle slot, which would be the support. You want to, if possible, make the agility values close enough such so that what's going to happen here is Shrek is going to move, then Exdeath is going to move, and Lena's going to buff both of them. But when Lena doesn't move, and this is just a game rule, when your unit does not move, they do not deplete their entire CT bar. They only deplete some of it. And so what's going to happen is Lena's actually going to go again before Exdeath and Shreka move so that she can actually use her TMR. I do have this enabled, and this is the lock TMR. This is what gives agility and luck percent, which is going to help their overall accuracy and speed. But that's why we say agility tuning is very important. If my Shreka was a couple more agility points faster, or my Lena a couple points slower, Shreka would actually move before Lena is able to get that second buff off. And so this is one of those things where the details definitely matter. Now, the last thing I will high level go over here is the vision card and Esper setup. I'm going for full magic res pen here on Exdeath. There's other Esper options. I think Bahamut is certainly a worthy option alongside a handful of others. I do like Dark Siren here on Shreka because I think this is the most accurate magic Esper you can equip. Dark Siren technically does have magic attack nodes, so there is a little bit of offensive modifiers. For Lena, I am using the Trials of Reckoning item because this does affect her cast time breakpoint, so I'm keeping that in the back of my mind. For main slot vision cards here, I do have the unit res here on one, I do have the agility res for another, and I have the AoE res, the new Exdeath card here. And then in the sub slots, I have the VV one because I do want that extra reaction block rate. I get that magic percent. And for the sub slots here, I like debuff weakening for this team, but the magic Maneater modifier also really important, but the debuff weakening certainly helps Exdeath, who focuses on that. But then for Shreka's sub one, you might raise an eyebrow. This is purely here for accuracy percent. Are there other agility ones that I could use for Staff Black Mage? There are. I could easily use a variety of them. I know Greater Demon, you have the Hio Vision card, There's the generic Helena Black Rose, the Mono Dark Vision card, but I'm using the Tifa one in particular because it does have the luck 21%, which I do want for my Shreka, which brings us finally to the last thing here, the potential hit rates. Now, this is not a perfect science either because it doesn't take into account the fact that, like, you know, the enemy team is going to buff evasion. If you were using Summer Resnick, you might buff accuracy. So there's still a lot of, like, things to think about in that hit rate formula, but I do have an Excel sheet, and I do have this online somewhere in a cloud-based version. I'll see if I can find it to repost it for you guys to help. But for now, what I've basically done is I have put in the stats for my Shreka. I've put in the stats for my max reincarnated Riku to get an idea of like what the highest innate evade rate I should expect is. And right now, my hit rate isn't all that great. I'm only at that 22%. And my Shreka is also max reincarnated. Now, she does have an extra 30% chance to hit on one of her abilities, so I'm kind of taking that into account. I'm also banking on the fact that I might not be hitting evade units that are reincarnated, so I'll get probably like a 30% bump to the hit rate by the nature that the enemy Riku and Venera may not be reincarnated. But bottom line is, I'm actually not 100% as accurate as I could be or should be to reliably hit these evade units. This is where realistically the other alternative options I might look for are probably replacing the Shinryu Vision card, although you could make a case why you might also do the Vivi one. I do like all the stats on this, and I'd probably try to supplement this with just a straight up accuracy percent Vision card, which unfortunately Staff Black Mage doesn't have, so I'd probably have to use something like the Delita MonoFire card. That's obviously unoptimal though. But there are a variety of other ways you could still build this team. This obviously is going a little more for some of the trade-off of bulk and offensive nature. I would be very intrigued to use the Dawn Trail Vision card here instead of Shinryu just to get the extra Spirit Penetration and Magic Attack up. And I'm so sorry, upon further thought, I actually am going to do this. I don't know why I didn't do this to start. It's relatively similar to Shinryu in that it offers offensive modifiers and debuff weakening. So this is the team I'm going to run with here. And so we're going to stress test against a variety of teams that I think at first glance should be good relative indicators of what the matchup should look like. And I'm actually going to start off here against Kot, who is a top-ranked Guild War player. He's a veteran within that area. This is going to be a very interesting team in that this obviously is not one that you see often, but I would like to just stress test this. Joom is notoriously an anti-magic unit that has that decrease of magic res pen, which this team actually excels at. Xe obviously does some great things in terms of the buff ceiling potential. And just eyeballing this team, I can see that they were also gearing for accuracy. So realistically, this team's not going to be as bulky as what it might be ordinarily. They're using a lot of, luck percent stuff, accuracy-oriented espers, Alex rings here, but still a decent enough, well-balanced team that I'm sure this Joom is likely max reincarnated as well. So we'll see how it plays out. Just filling some time if I was making some predictions. I think this team should beat theirs, if only because I think Lena does enough from an anti-magic perspective that I'm not terribly concerned about Exia's personal damage. And although Joom does have the decrease of enemy, like magic res pen, Exdeath has enough debuff weakening that I don't think she's going to do much to him in terms of reducing his, and also she's not great against the unit resistance type attacks. She's could be worse. I do know that Summer Resnick can dispel follow-ups, so I would expect Shreka to have that dispelled relatively quickly, but we'll see how this all shakes out. And so you're going to see this turn rotation now of what I was talking about, where, just a second here, after they go first, they are faster. Okay. That looks like the non-limit break, so that's her regular buff. And so you'll see my Exdeath moves first here. That's his re-raise and regen. Shreka uses her teammate buff here. And now you're going to see Lena use her diamond one. This is the Spirit, Protect Seal, some survivability metrics for her. You're going to see now this is the Summer Resnick buff. This is her most important buff, other than the Aura, which you should activate next. But you'll see now my Lena actually goes before they can act again. And that's what we say agility tuning. That's very specifically done, because if Shreka was faster than her, Shreka would move forward and would not get that lock TMR. So now we're getting the Xe limit break. That's going to give them all these modifiers and the man-eater up. It looks like I'm baited here now. So this is exactly what we're talking about, that my Exdeath did not get his second buff off. I fortunately got the Doom off, so she's only got a couple turns to live. Decent damage. I unfortunately not stacking sleep resistance at this moment. I was gearing again more for stun res, berserk res, disable res. So that's kind of an L for me that I don't have the sleep res active, but here comes the Exdeath. Limit break. Not the best damage, could be worse. This is the Lena buff that gives the re-raise to both her and Shreka. I love that for her survivability. Unfortunately, still can't act, and she's going to take a lot of damage here. Yep, takes her out. She at least has the re-raise active, so she will have an opportunity to still attack, maybe get healed up, hopefully. Triple burst coming out here. Not a ton of damage, even with all the magic res pen. Shreka, though, absolutely coming in there with a fair amount of damage. Hopefully can get healed up here. This is going to be the Lena limit break, so that's going to give her Protect and Shell. And they should have Protect enabled online without the ability to be dispelled now. It was sealed. Joom, unfortunately, can't do anything because she's immobilized. And I'm very lucky that Exia is about to meet her maker in just a turn here. At least getting the limit break off here now. This is going to get rid of barriers and honeycombs. Decent amount of damage. This is a rebuff of Lena where I'd have to check if I have any of her offensive abilities on it. I thought I did, maybe not. But here's that attack magic spirit buff. So they just have so much spirit at the moment. This is the Summer Resnick limit break. This will cleanse any kind of debuffs to them. And Exia is going to die no matter what. So this is really fortunate for me. She was doing some of the heavy lifting to start. But now, just kind of, I think, a matter of time. I don't think this 2v3, unless... Yeah, they removed his re-raise. And she was not able to cure in time. So there's that cast time problem with Lena. Real time coming to bite her in the butt. She does not have any kind of raise mechanics in her kit. So at this point, this truly is even. Hoping to see now if I can outlast them. I'm actually not confident that I can. That's obviously a ton of healing. I think I'm going to win on turns here just by the nature that I have more HP than they did, and that's exactly it. So that was actually a lot closer than I was anticipating. Obviously, I expected Exdeath to also get his second buff off, but they are faster, and Exia has some of the CT up in her kit that can keep her faster. But that was a really competitive fight. That was actually really, really great to see. This is going to be an interesting next one. I'm going to go off of Dagobah Humbug here. Now, I don't think this is a perfect Earth team, but to me, this is a numbers stress test, where obviously Riku and Mont are being geared for Hypervade, but this is also where you can see the bias of the vision card here, where this Kefka vision card really doesn't do much for this party. It's obviously here just for the bonus, and so this already is not a team you would expect. But there's even things about Sodal here that I don't love in the build. I would prefer the Solomon gloves on him. I would prefer an Evade Esper rather than Dark Tetrasulfid. You could use regular Tetrasulfid. I almost wonder if this is a mistake, where the person thought they were using Tetrasulfid, but either way, it should still be a good stress test versus what the pseudo-evade rate of Mont is and what the full evade rate of Riku is going to be. And so my hope here is that Exdeath can at least still hit someone like Sodali, who's not fully geared for the evasion. Although my Exdeath is not terribly accurate, I at least have a little bit of luck in the party, in that sub-slot vision card, and obviously he still has a guaranteed hit, so he can just spam that on Sodali till Kingdom Comes. But this is really where you kind of put all your eggs in one basket on Shreka and hope that she does have the hit rate, the survivability, obviously with the elemental matchup, that she can do the heavy lifting of really like bursting down their damage and letting Exdeath just kind of live long enough to do the chip damage, take care of things. So I'm going to imagine that their team is likely much faster. That's actually not the case, and probably a little concerning, quite frankly. The fact that Riku isn't faster than my Exdeath, a little bit odd. I also forgot to mention this. There is something very special about that slot 2 and 3. Because they're within a couple squares of each other, they're getting the unit affinity bonuses for each other. So technically that's why Exdeath, although he's slower in the menu, when you look at the agility values, in-game when it starts, he's actually faster than Shreka, because him and Lena are getting unit affinity off of each other, which increases their agility, their dexterity, and their luck. And so for now, I'm just letting this battle still play out. Nothing terribly unorthodox about the rotation. He unfortunately gets the second buff here off, which is huge. It's the re-raise, it's the element res. That's one of the reasons why he didn't have that chance to re-raise last time. Shreka here is going to use Farplosion. Whoa. Ton of damage there. Unfortunately misses. She almost would have been able to take her out. Not a lot of damage taken there. Sodali's coming out with the limit break here. He's going to have his follow-up too. Doesn't do much damage at all, and obviously this Earth team is not meant to be like high-octane offense. It's really meant to be more Hypervade, so they're clearly trading off, and I miss even on the side. They're clearly trading off some of the offense they're used to seeing for that evade. And so here comes Mont. Really not that much damage at all. They have 2 follow-ups online, though. Both Sadali and King Mont have theirs on. Let's see if Shreka can at least, like, oh my god. She still has the follow-up here, too, so it's going to bring them to courage. It's not going to kill King Mont, but that's one of those things where, like, we talk about reincarnations. That can often be the difference. He was really close to dying, but I imagine now guaranteed hit is at least going to be able to finish him off. At this point, it's really just up to Shreka to land another hit. I get a little damage buff there. Unavailable pain, that's the guaranteed hit. I do have that just in case. For instances like this, it certainly does help. So this is basically what I expected. Again, that kind of Hypervade Earth team, not a lot of area res or unit res or damage mitigations, and it's not really offensive tuned either to do a ton of damage to you. So good numbers test though. So now I am going to actually really stress test this against that evade team. I'm going to hit crap baggy here. This to me at first glance actually is a legitimate evade team. I don't see any wonky bonus vision card things going on here. I do see the proper vision cards for the luck percent in both main and sub slots. Espers look good. Equipment looks good. I can even see the Lucille has the lock TMR, which I also do. So I'm imagining that if done properly, she can apply that to both these evade girls. We'll see if that ends up happening, but this is absolutely going to be a great stress test for my team. It's kind of what I'm gearing for Trust Stone set-wise as well, where again, I have that stun res, I have the blind res, I have the berserk res, why I left off the sleep res before for something like disable, which Lucille also have. And this is where, like, again, those Trust Stone passives really make the difference and is super important for everyone to keep on top of. I know it's a pain in the butt to constantly have to think about it, but at least the game has made it really easy in the menu to finally like pick exactly what you want and tailor make some specific trust stones for your units. Alright, let's see how the stress test goes. This likely could be the last one I'll do. I'll look to see if there's another unique enemy after this, but Riku is the fastest. Not terribly unsurprising. Venera can be the fastest depending if you use the Feather Basilar dagger on her. That's the, oh god, selection quest weapon. Gives a lot of agility. So this is her large diamond AoE that she applies. Lena gets to move before my units do. So this is kind of what I was worried about. So I don't think that Lucille's gonna get the lock TMR off the way she should. And if you had normally disabled that limit break, I think she could have. She would have casted haste on both units, then would have used the TMR. I'll be honest, I think that is preferred. It's one of those times where it sounds crazy to turn the Lucille limit break off, but I think the lock TMR is far more beneficial for this team than giving Riku re-raise. So here's continuous attack. Honestly, doesn't do a ton of damage. I'm pretty happy with that. So, and yeah, now she never gets to use that lock TMR. So to me, to whoever this player is, turn off that limit break, because Lucille, oh, I have a stun res rune on, and it still happened. That's an exceptional amount of damage, though. Venera at least gets the re-raise on. The follow-up attack, though, is able to finish her. I'm able to at least bring Riku to courage. I at least get... This is great for my Shreka now to ensure that she has the re-raise active. Exdeath at least still holding up pretty well. He can't do anything at the... Oh, no, he's channeling. I think he should be using D-Shell. So she's going to get healed. And absolutely just one shot by Shreka. She's going to re-raise, and the follow-up attack finishes it. And yeah, he did use D-Shell. That's because his hit rate is 0, which I'm fine with. D-Shell is a huge spirit imperil to those enemies, so if Shreka wasn't already max damaging them, she probably would be after that imperil. And now here comes Farplosion, and then it's going to get the follow-up. Lucille will re-raise because she used her limit break here. But again, to me, I would have much rather this team used the lock TMR, because you saw how easily my Shreka was able to hit them. That difference in evade rate might have made the difference. Now, time for a really fun matchup. I am going to go against this Pierce team here, and just by glancing at it, again, I don't see anything funny here with the bonus vision cards. They're clearly built for like bulk and damage. I like the Esper selection for them overall. I am curious to see what Lucille's AI here is, what she opts to do, but one of the big things that we've been looking out for is seeing how this team fares against the spear units, and by and large, spear units have a pretty good advantage over the Exdeath and Shreka team, not only just from a damage perspective, but they just do well from like survivability perspective with how they complement each other with their own buffs, but we'll see how it unfurls. Now, my personal prediction is that I'm about to get blown out of the water. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. So the Ramada's fastest, I actually don't mind that. I like that buff on Gilgamesh. That AP restore on critical hit is really good for him. I would imagine that their Lucille's going to move over and likely limit break then. No, she's casting her, imagine, her select to the haste. So, you know, this is a good rotation. This is one of those opportunities where I think I prefer this to her limit break, which means that now she can use her own TMR. Now, I don't know if she's going to be able to get both. I think she will, which is going to be the Man-Eater resistance, or yeah, the human resistance, the crit evade. Fortunately, they're not in range yet, so my Exdeath does get that second buff. Oh, and that is a pretty big bait. So I do bait the Lucille from not using the TMR. This is the Gilgamesh limit break, though, and he should do a fair amount of damage. He does. I get the CT up, but it's not enough to lap her, and unfortunately, my Shreka did not have the re-raise online yet from the Lena buff. So again, that amount of damage, really hard to live through. At this point, too, they both have haste, and I have no way to dispel it. Normally, Shreka's follow-up attack would have been enough to dispel the haste, but the fact that she's already dead, there is no way that I win this. I'm just calling it right now, guys. I'm going to get CT. Oh my god, yeah. 11,000 damage on a non-critical hit. The re-raise comes. It's not going to matter. They're going to do that to me all over again. Lena moving forward. Decent enough damage, but yeah, not enough to overcome what I'm going to take. A rogue, oh my god, it misses. And this fight is very quickly over. And so yeah, this is definitely one of those teams to look out for if you're running the Shreka Exdeath team. Now, admittedly, you probably could build your Shreka to have some Pierce res somewhere. You probably could build her for more bulk, but there are trade-offs in doing so, where now all of a sudden you can't hit those evade teams, which to me is really what this team is intended to do. If you have to sacrifice too much that they can't take on the evade teams, then this team loses a lot of its unique value. I'm going to go for one last fight here. This is a MonoFire iteration. This is Sephiroth and Gilgamesh, so still going to keep an eye out on how Gilgamesh does in this matchup versus these two. The cards are good enough. They're not perfect, but they're good enough, I think, for a reasonable takeaway. And I do like seeing some of Resnick here. We've seen a fair bit of Lucille. I am very intrigued to see Resnick in here because Resnick does dispel follow-up attacks. It's the barrier seal, which Exdeath does have a barrier break, and so doesn't Shreka on her limit break. And so there's that whole counterplay of sealed or not sealed, and Sephiroth can dispel things on hit, and he's got, is it re-raise move? No, it's Karch move. Either way, there's a lot of good stuff that should be in play here. Very interested to see how it shakes out. Alright, and here we go. See things, how they shake out. So it looks like I'm faster than both of them. Again, a little concerning. My team is not terribly fast by speed standards. Sephiroth can get into the 130s, potentially, for agility. Gilgamesh, it varies depending on your passive. But either way, you typically do want to have all three of your teammates be pretty close in agility values. That way they all act together. That typically is great for a snowball effect to potentially just have them all go at once. You often can win the fight just like that. So, so far I get both my buffs off because I do have the speed advantage. I would imagine that I can still get the re-raise off on my Shreka, but it's going to depend on how much damage Exdeath takes here. If he takes a lot of damage, my Lena is going to be forced into healing him. Doesn't take that much damage here. And I think I baited him that I don't remember him getting that second buff off that. I don't think he has the follow-up active, but that limit break gives him haste. You saw he just lapped the entire team. They don't take a lot of damage, but I at least remove the re-raise. They don't have the immobilized trust zones on. Exdeath here going to use this limit break. Not a lot of damage here either, but at least seals protect, which hopefully Lena can limit break here soon and grant them protect. That way it's going to obviously help them. Esunaga coming in very clutch against something very different that Lucille can't do for a team like this. I'm pretty sure that Exdeath's about to be cooked. Yeah. I think he at least has the re-raise still active. This is where I'm hoping I can get the limit break in a second to protect or seal their protect removal capability, which, actually, I'm thinking of Gilgamesh. I don't know if Gilgamesh can do it. Never mind. Damage is okay. She's going to rebuff the TMR. Again, I would have hoped for maybe a little extra healing to top them off, but at least reapplies the Immobilize. I'm able to kill Sephiroth. Gilgamesh really doing well here, holding his own. The CT up there is huge just to keep the turn order, not allow me to stack up the damage turns in a row. Get that magic and spirit buff on. Pretty valuable cure here. Again, he can't move and he's out of AP. He did not get that second buff offline, so he did start lower than average from an AP perspective. Down goes Summer Resnick. Exdeath now, you know, I would imagine no trouble hitting him. Lena's just going to rebuff that main buff. Interestingly enough, he can still use, okay, the jump ability while immobilized. Not terribly surprised. A lot of damage there, though. Absolutely destroys Lena, but she has that re-raise active from her buff. He's doing really well, though, taking damage here, because, you know, you're getting an onslaught from both of them. But at this point, it's only a matter of time. Wow. Wait a minute, I might speak too soon. Now they have Poison active, Unavailable Pain comes out. Still, a really strong testament to Gilgamesh to how well he did there. Not only damage output, but survivability. But I think I'm going to pause there for the showcase. I think this is exactly what I wanted to show off. I built this team to counter some evade. I think it did so relatively well. Again, obviously going to be different when you stress test certain things, but it won versus the things that I wanted it to win against. It lost versus the things that I thought it was going to lose against. And in some of those matchups where I thought it was close, like the Juma fight, like the Sephiroth fight, I'm glad that they ended up on top. So overall, there are some improvements I'm sure I could make. You could probably swap slots around to try to see the spacing differences. You obviously could still play with some agility values. You could use an entirely different TMR here for Lena. You could use a whole different support here. People love using Lucille. Summer Resnick, a great option. Vision cards, I don't think there's much to necessarily tinker with. You might replace this one for a different agility card that's realistically maybe one of the overall improvements you could make. But that's it for now. So thanks for watching. Hopefully learned a little bit about what I do to team build, some of the details that I look at when I make a team. You can use this team and play around with it and see how best you can replicate it as well. But per usual, comments, critiques, criticisms, throw them on the comment section below. Love to hear your feedback on this kind of video. I know it went kind of long, but I figure who doesn't love seeing replays? I guess it could be worse if it was long. But yeah, let me know if there's any improvements I can make to this kind of video so that as I continue to make these, which that's my goal, I will attempt to make these as often as possible now. Let me know so I can improve the quality. But thanks for watching. I'll talk to y'all soon.